Hi everybody, this is David Temple, Managing Editor of TechGraphs, and today I'm going to show you how to get your computer set up for a Retrosheet database for the upcoming 2016 season. If you follow TechGraphs, you will know that we did a very similar series last year on the 2015 season, and a lot of this is going to have some carryover, except it's going to have all the new data, the 2015 season data, as well as all the updated data from previous seasons in case any addendums had to be made by the fine folks over at Retrosheet. So if you do have a 2015 database already, there's going to be a lot of carryover here, so feel free to follow along up to the point where we show you how to get the new Retrosheet data from our GitHub site, and then once you have that, you can probably skip over to video 2 where we actually walk you through how to install that data. But for those who don't have it, or for those who forgot, or for those who got a new computer and want to get set up fresh, this is going to walk you through how to do that. So I have a virtual machine set up here. It's a Windows virtual machine. This is going to be for Windows only at this point. I do have some Mac instructions coming. I'm working on tweaking those a little bit, so stay tuned for those. Check out techgraphs.com for any updates there. So we'll get started here on the Windows environment. I'm going to go ahead and open Firefox, and I'll have all the links for these tabs, both on the show notes of the YouTube page as well as the actual article on TechGraphs. So all these links will be available to you. But this is the page for our GitHub site where we will get all the corresponding data that we need that holds all the Retrosheet stuff, or at least I should say the installers for getting the new Retrosheet stuff. That's actually an important point I should make out. This doesn't actually hold the Retrosheet data. This just has the newer installers that will make sure that you do grab it when we get into that in the second video. So all you really need to do from here, if you're a GitHub user, you can obviously pull all this down on your own time. You obviously know how to do that, but for those who don't, no big deal. We have a nice easy button here that just says download zip. So I'll go ahead and click that download, and for right now we'll save the file. And I think I actually have two of these because I was testing it earlier, but that's fine. We will go ahead and open this. And this will open either in 7-zip. If you have that, we'll walk through how to install that in just a little bit, or it should open just in your regular Windows zip manager. So you can just click on this and extract it. We'll put it right actually on the desktop, if I spell it right. Excellent. So we can minimize that, and we'll minimize that, and now we can see this is exactly the same stuff that was on our GitHub page. These bottom two you can obviously ignore, no big deal. These are the two files that we want to deal with right here. So these are set up depending on your architecture. If you don't know that, you can check that by going to your Start menu, right-clicking on Computer, choosing Properties, and then down here it'll say 64-bit operating system or 32-bit operating system. Most of you will probably have a 64-bit operating system if you have a somewhat newer computer. If not, you can grab the x86. If you have 32-bit, you'll want the x86 folder. If you have 64-bit like me, you'll want the x64 folder. So I think for simplicity's sake, I'm going to actually, what I'll do is I'll open this and I'll copy everything that's in here. So just do a quick copy. And then we're going to go into your C folder. And this is obviously if you have 64 or 32-bit, these are all the same instructions basically from here on out. Let's make a new folder. We'll call it Retrosheet. So we'll just go C, right in your C drive, C:\Retrosheet. You can see that's where we are now. And then we'll just go ahead and paste those in there. And there they are. And that's actually all we're going to do with this for right now. I will actually show you just a little bit of what's inside of here, but we're not going to actually do any actions on those. So these three down here are SQL dumps. Basically, this is a separate dump that we're going to load. This will show us the Retrosheet codes that you'll see later on when we actually build the database. Each play kind of has its own corresponding code. This is going to do something that makes our table smaller, basically, or our database smaller, and we'll get into that. And then this is actually the schema. The schema of a database basically tells, the easiest way to put this, the schema of the database is basically the settings of the database. What tables are in the database and which fields are in those tables, and then kind of the attributes of those fields. You don't really have to worry about that. It's going to do it all automatically, but just to let you know. The common folder has one other folder called programs, and these are our Chadwick programs. They're little exe programs that were made, and those are basically the programs that are going to parse all the data that we need, and you'll see those in the scripts in just a second, but those go there in that folder. And then the data folder has both the unzipped and the zipped folder. The unzipped folder, basically these are all the batch scripts that will be running to get the Retrosheet data. And I'm actually going to open one of these up and kind of show you what's going on. Let's just open the game one for now. I'm going to open this in Notepad++. You can open it in Notepad or whatever other program you want. So, but this is just what I'm going to do. So you'll see here, basically this is just a script that will run in Retrosheet common programs, blah, blah, blah. Right? That's all the same. Cool. That's the folder that we were just looking at. And then it has a bunch of arguments in here, which you don't really have to worry about. And then what we're doing now is grabbing the 2015 data. So if you were to do this next year, all you would do, after the 2016 data comes out, you would just copy it, go back to the beginning, add a line, and paste, and then change all these 2015s into 2016s. And that would make sure that you grab every file from 2016 down. Obviously, we're only doing, 2016 data doesn't exist yet, at least at the time of this recording. So that is what you're going to want to do in future. So you can actually keep these files on your computer somewhere, save them somewhere else, and then, or on your desktop, wherever you want to save them, doesn't really matter to me. And then in 2016, when that data is available, you can actually just edit these scripts to just make sure that you have the 2016 data as well. You don't really even have to worry about what these are pointing to. If you have a little bit of knowledge of scripting, you can kind of get a gist of exactly what's going on. Basically, it's turning, it's using the CW game program with a bunch of arguments and referencing these EV files, and then, parsing them basically into a CSV file, which we will eventually bring in to the database. Again, if you don't understand this, not a huge deal right now. I'm just kind of walking you through how all that works. And the same goes for the event file. Again, you just want to make a new line, copy all this, paste it into there, and then change all the 2015s into 2016s. And then, whoops, I should not have double-clicked that, but I'll work on that later. No big deal. The same goes for here, obviously, again. In the future, for next season, you'd want to, and all subsequent seasons, just copy this, paste a new line into there, and then change all the dates. So that's that. So if we go back to the data folder and check out zipped, what you'll see is a script here to get the zip files. So check that out too. This one's really easy. Basically, it uses wget, which wget is basically, oops, sorry about that. Wget is basically a utility that will download a lot of things from the internet in one fell swoop. You can use it to download one thing from your command line, but a lot of people use it in a scripting fashion like this to download multiple files at once without having to click next link, download, next link, download, next link, download. This kind of does it all together for you in one package. So you can see that wget will pull down, it will basically reference this text file, which I'll show you in a second, and then it will reference all the fields in that text file, download every single one of them, and unzip them into that unzipped folder. And we will see that in the second video. I just kind of want to show you how this all works now. So, and then the Retrosheet zip files, this is also important that you notice because we're going to edit this one as well. And what this does is it has the HTML link to all the zip folders that we're going to want to pull down. If I scroll all the way down, oh, there's some weird spacing in there. Don't know how that got in there, but no matter. What you'll want to do in future seasons, kind of like we were showing you with the scripting, is actually copy this line, paste a new line below it, and then change the 2015 into 2016, obviously, or 17, or however long you want to go whenever you're watching this. So again, don't really need to know exactly how all this works, but for those who do care, I was just kind of walking you through what everything does and how everything operates, and then how to edit and create fields, or I should say create lines for subsequent seasons, if you wanted to do this in future years. Okay, so if we go back to Retrosheet folder, we can look in loaders, and then we will also see these SQL files here, and these we will load into our SQL database later on. And basically, we can actually just take a look here. This is all SQL commands, and it's saying, load basically from these files that we're gonna create later into this certain table, and then a bunch of arguments going on. If you know SQL, you'll kind of have a general understanding of how this works. If you don't know SQL, no big deal. Just just know that this is a file that we're going to have to also edit down here in subsequent seasons. Again, adding oops, sorry about that. Adding, 2016.csv, 2017.csv, however long forward you want to go, depending on the year that you're watching this or the year that you want to get that data for. So again, copy this whole line, paste it underneath, just change 2015 into 2016. That's in the events folder. You want to do the same for the games folder, the games file, and this same for the subs file. They all look very similar. You just want to make sure, again, that you have the newest data. Otherwise, you'll have some stuff from, if you forget any of these, you'll have some stuff from 2016, some stuff from 2015, et cetera, et cetera. So these are the important things that you're going to want to notice if you want to do this again in the future. And I'm sure we'll have a video to next year showing how to do all this, but just in case, it's always good to have that. So again, the loaders you're going to want to edit for future usage. The event, game, and subscripts in the unzipped folder you're going to want to use for later usage, and the Retrosheet zip files, basically the links, you're going to want to make sure to update those for future seasons as well. And I think that's about all we need to look at for that. So we're just going to leave that there. We're not actually going to look at anything quite yet in there. We're just going to make sure that we have all the other programs necessary to get going on this. So I'll actually close that. We'll go ahead and close this. I'll go back. We'll close this just for continuity's sake. I will go back to Firefox, and we're going to move next to MySQL. So MySQL is the program. Basically, the MySQL server is the program that we're going to use to host our SQL database. So it's actually pretty simple. Again, this link will be in the show notes and on the article at TechGraphs. We're just going to go ahead and click here. We're going to scroll down a little bit. Select platform. It should automatically select the platform that you want. And then again, you're going to have to know whether you want 32-bit or 64-bit architecture. So we can actually, they changed this page a little bit for me. So actually just install the full installer, and I'll walk you through how to do that. So let's just go ahead and click the MySQL installer. This will set us up for everything that we need. So we'll just go ahead and click download here, and we'll scroll down. And we just want the bigger one down here, the bigger MSI installer. Again, if it switches platforms for you, make sure it's on Microsoft Windows, and then we'll go ahead and download this. and you'll be greeted with this page. You don't need to log in, sign up, or anything like that. You can just click no thanks, start my download down here, and we'll just go ahead and save it. And this is going to take a little while to download, and rather than have you watch my download progress, we will just do a quick jump cut to the distant future. All right, we are in the future, and the installer is done downloading, so we'll just go to my downloads, and we'll just go ahead and click the installer and run it. And so what the MySQL installer does is it gives you a lot of options to install certain facets of the MySQL experience. I guess that's probably a terrible way to explain it, but it's not. You'll see what I'm getting at. So just do all the necessary Windows garbage, and then let it extract, and I'll show you what I'm talking about here in just a few seconds. Or 13 seconds. So I can actually show you up here. So the installer includes MySQL Server, MySQL connectors, Workbench, some sample databases if you're into that, kind of an extension, MySQL for Excel, and the notifier and everything like that. The things that we're going to want to install, and I'll show you how to do that in the install screen, is going to be MySQL Server. Obviously, that's the biggest thing that we need. We're also going to need the SQL notifier, MySQL notifier, and maybe for good measure documentation. In the past, I'd recommended installing MySQL Workbench, which is basically a front-end program for MySQL, but I have found in doing my testing, I got a little terrific. Thanks a lot. There we go. I found that in my testing, the newest version of MySQL Workbench actually throws a few monkey wrenches into our Retrosheet setup. It won't let us do a few things. We'd have to go in and edit some INI files and stuff like that, and really that's just kind of a pain in the butt for both me and you. So I'm actually going to show you how to get a different front-end program called SQL Yog in just a few minutes here. But first, let's go ahead and accept these license terms. And so what we're going to want to do, let's go ahead and choose the custom down here, and that'll let us kind of pick and choose which products we want to install. So choose custom, and then go ahead and click next. And then we're going to want to choose MySQL Server. So this will install either the 64-bit or the 32-bit version. I talked earlier about how to find that. Make sure to choose the right one. I'm on 64-bit, so I'll go ahead and add that. That should put it on the right screen over there. Excellent. If you expand applications, again, we're going to skip over Workbench, but let's do the SQL notifier, and that's only one version, the 32-bit version. And basically what that does is it puts a little widget down here in your system tray that kind of lets you know the status of your SQL Server. And then let's go ahead and just click on documentation, expand that, and then expand it all the way down to here. That's fun that it makes you do that. Click that and then add that as well. And that'll just be some help documentation. We're not going to actually use this or use it in this video, but it may come in handy later on, so we might as well just add it. And so now that we have the server, the notifier, and the documentation, we'll go ahead and click next. And it should be ready to install. If you don't have certain dependencies for these files or for these programs, this will alert you that you need to download. I think .NET 4 is one that you need. Don't panic if it doesn't look exactly like it's going to look on my system. It's okay. Just let it install the things that it needs to install. It's just going to install some dependencies, nothing goofy or out of the ordinary, just some stuff that MySQL Server needs to run. But it looks like I'm okay here, so we're just going to go ahead and click execute. And you'll see the progress here that this is installing, and then the progress, and then it will do its thing. Again, if it asks you, if it says that you need .NET 4, or I don't think it has any Java dependencies, but if it does for whatever reason, just go ahead and click accept and install those things. And if you need to rerun this installer, no big deal. Like I said, don't panic. It's not really a huge deal. You just may need to add a few last-minute things to your system before this is all good to go. So we'll go ahead and click Next here now that this is done. And now MySQL Server is ready to configure. So we'll go ahead and do that now. Go ahead and click Next. Okay. So the config type here, we'll just leave at development machine. Totally fine. Don't need to worry even really what that means. We'll actually just keep all this stuff the same. So just leave everything where it is. If for whatever reason yours doesn't match mine, make sure that this is all set. We'll use the standard port number there. But everything looks good here, so go ahead and click Next. And then now we're going to create a root password. A root password, basically this is the password to log into your database. Because this is kind of a personal database and basically it only holds information that's publicly available anyway, I don't get too crazy on passwords here. Usually I am a big fan of strong passwords with, numbers, characters, capital letters, that whole thing. I like throwing a lot of entropy into my passwords, but for this, we don't really need to because it lives on your system. And again, there's no real personal data on here. It's just publicly available baseball stuff, right? So for the password, for whatever reason, I have in the past, and I will continue to use just the word Retrosheet, all lowercase one word. You can use whatever you want, baseball password, I guess, if you want to do that. But for me, I'm just going to type in Retrosheet here. And then I'll tab down and do the same. And it's a weak password. But again, we talked about how that's not necessarily a huge deal. So now that we got that, we'll go ahead and click Next. I'm just going to go back here for a second. If you want to add MySQL user accounts, you certainly can. If you know what you're doing, cool, go for it. Basically, the whole point of that is that the root account can do anything and everything inside the MySQL database. You can actually add extra users down here that maybe have varying levels of control over what they can do in the database. Perhaps you only want them to pull stuff down, do basically select statements instead of insert statements. That's all fine and good if you want to set that up here. Again, I'm going to trust that you know what you're doing. But to, first of all, import all the data, we're going to need to have a user that can insert data into the tables. So we'll probably just want to use the root user anyway. If you're new to this, you don't know a whole lot about it, totally cool. Don't even worry about this section. Just go ahead and create your root password and repeat it down here. It is very important, I should say, that you remember this password. It is, it's not like a web account where you can just click a forgot my password link and you get an email with a link, to reset your password. If you forget this password, your database is dead. You're going to have to basically delete it and create a new one. That's why I use Retrosheet. It's easy for me to remember. You can use whatever you want, baseball, password, your dog's name, whatever. Just make sure that you do remember it. It is very important that you don't forget. So anyway, we're all set here, so we'll go ahead and click Next. And we certainly want to create it or configure it as a service. Service name is fine. I'm going to leave this on MySQL Server, start MySQL Server at system startup. Basically, this just means that the service is started when the computer is started so that you can go ahead and connect to your database without having to start the service. A service is basically... easiest way to put it, a service is basically like a program that lets you, or that does certain things on the machine, usually in the background. And MySQL Server is certainly one of those things. So basically, the service is like the engine. You want to make sure that the engine's running before you do anything. So for the sake of simplicity, I'll go ahead and let this start at startup. If you know what you're doing and you have a reason for this to not be checked, go forth accordingly. But for this VM, actually, I only really use this for SQL or for Retrosheet databases anyway. So, and you can run it as a standard account. Again, if you know what you're doing, you can choose a custom user. But if you're new to this or you just kind of want to have the vanilla install, just leave everything like it is here. We'll go ahead and click Next. And then it's just telling us what it's going to do. That's cool. We'll go ahead and click Execute. And this should only take a few seconds here. And you can see now that the SQL notifier started down here. And it's starting it up, creating the user accounts, and everything's good. So you can see MySQL, this service changed from stopped to running, which is cool. We'll go ahead and click finish. And then this is kind of weird, but we have to go ahead and click next and then finish again. But we're all set now. So you can see that I have a little doohickey down here, a little widget in my system tray that lets me know what's going on with my SQL Server. So we're actually all done with my SQL Server now. We don't need to touch that, at least for now. Like I said, we're just getting everything set up to prep us to install the data later. So we are all done with the MySQL Server setup, and we're going to move on to wget. Wget, like I mentioned before, it's basically a program that allows you to download files from the internet through the command line, which might seem like a weird way to do it, which is true, unless you want to do multiple files all at once. It lends itself very well to scripting, which it actually will lend itself to later on. If you remember, I showed you the list of links that we want to download from Retrosheet. We're going to download all of those via wget. So this is the download for wget for Windows. Again, link will be in the notes and in the article. We'll go ahead and click this, download the setup. We'll just download the whole thing. And it's actually hosted on SourceForge, which I realize can be scary for some, but don't worry about it. This one's legit. So we're actually just gonna save this. And it should take a very short amount of time. Excellent. Let's go ahead and click the installer, and we'll go ahead and click run, and yes, and we're gonna set up wget. Real easy. Basically just click next, accept the agreement. The default program files folder is just fine, and you can leave all that there. Cool. Just a lot of clicking next. And we'll just leave that there for now. We won't get too fancy. And we'll install. That's it. Okay, so now that that's all done, we'll go ahead and move on to 7-zip. 7-zip is a zip utility similar to the zip utility in Windows, but it adds a few more things. I already have it installed. You saw it earlier when I was downloading some zips and extracting them, but I'll just show you this page here. You want to download the exe for, again, either 32-bit or 64-bit. I can save that, and I'll just reinstall it. It's not going to hurt anything. It's going to put it right in here. Install. And then I'm not going to restart my computer, but you are going to have to restart your computer once that is done, or at least, before we move on to the second video. So I'll close that. And then the last thing we're going to do is get SQL Yog, which can be found here. This is the GitHub page for it. So basically, we're just going to get the community edition, pretty basic. Again, 64-bit or 32-bit. I will download 64-bit and save it. And like I mentioned before, SQL Yog is basically an alternative front-end GUI to graphical user interface to do all your tasks inside of SQL Server. I made it maybe sound a little bit more complicated than it is, but it's actually pretty simple to use, and it allows us to do more things out of the box than the actual official MySQL Workbench does. They all work well together. It all plugs into the same server, so it's really not a big deal. This one's just a little bit more user-friendly. So I'll go ahead back into my downloads and open the exe and do, yep, English is great. We'll go ahead and click next and accept. And next, this is all fine. This is fine. We'll do install. Pretty straightforward. Next. And this will open it. I actually don't want to right now because that is going to be for the second video. And the second video will be up in just a little bit. I'm going to let this sit out for a couple days just to make sure everybody can follow along properly. Make sure I didn't miss any steps. You know, nobody's perfect. So just in case I miss something or make a fatal flaw, I'm going to give this a couple days to make sure that everything works out. But this is all the setup that you need to get your Retrosheet database up and running. And then in the second video, we'll show you how to actually pull down all those Retrosheet files, parse them out into CSV files, and then import those CSV files into your database, which should be great. So you should be all set up. If you have any questions, feel free to make a comment on TechGraphs. The link for the requisite article will be in the notes for this YouTube video. You can also comment on YouTube. I'll be watching both if you're coming to this just from the YouTube side. But leave a comment if you have questions. I'll do my best to clear anything up, and we will move on from there. So thanks everybody for watching. Again, I'm David Temple, and stay tuned to TechGraphs for the second video in which we will install our Retrosheet data.